Dan Friedrich spoke to us just, about 3 or 4 months ago? And he said he'd come back, and we grabbed at the opportunity and said, "Welcome back." And here he is. I don't think he needs much introduction. You all know he's quite an expert on all things tech and AI. And he's also Second City trained. So if you have a laugh or two along the way, that's good too. Um, he has been a consultant for many high-level government agencies and businesses, and he's our own Hyde Parker. And welcome, Dan.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone coming back for more. Um, the the beatings will continue until the attitudes improve, as they say. Uh, I don't want to repeat what I said last time, but I don't want to assume everybody remembers it or saw it. I thought the way I would compromise on that is do a really super compressed version of some of the basics I went over last time, and then move on to new material. So, obviously, if we're going to talk about artificial intelligence, it might be good if we had some clue what it is. Uh, to and it's a devilishly kind of difficult thing to define, actually. Um, I mean, obviously, right in the label of it, you have artificial intelligence. So obviously, there's some aspect of it which is trying to mimic human cognition, and that's true. But what is it more specifically? Well, I mean, it's mainly software, right? I mean, there are some of what comes to us as AI capability is thanks to hardware. I mean, there are these fancy chips that I'm sure you've read about that NVIDIA and other companies have. And so there's a lot of intelligence on the chips, but even that intelligence is really a form of software that just happens to be implemented on a chip. Um, so it's pretty accurate to say that it's a form of software, and it is, and as such, it's concerned with automating things. That's what, in effect, all software does. Um, and so then, what's the big deal? Because we've been automating things for a long time, right? Uh, so what did we not know how to do that we now know how to do, right? Thanks to AI. And the way I like to summarize it is to distinguish between um, solving problems using deterministic methods versus probabilistic methods. And our traditional programming tools have used deterministic methods, and artificial intelligence uses probabilistic methods. So what do I mean by that? So a deterministic method is one where you get the same logic applied every time. Now, obviously, you have branches in that logic. So, if A, then B. So if the A is different, then you might branch to a different place and all of that. So there's plenty of
It
different
was
outcomes
possible for me to get the picture again before, but oh, wait,
ex, excuse me, somebody having some tech difficulty.
I'm sorry. I need to mute myself.
Okay.
Mute this, please.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, so our traditional automation uses what I'm arguing uses deterministic methods. So you get it's that logic is the same logic over and over and over again. Obviously, you pour different data into it and you branch into different directions, but you get a deterministic outcome. With AI, it allows us to plow into problems that where no such traditional methods really work. And so they are probabilistic, meaning that they're fuzzy. They sort of try to hit the high spots. They try to understand the gist of the thing, so to speak. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get pretty close in some cases to being very accurate very often. But the examples of the kinds of automation that we're able to do with AI is taking text and converting it into voice. Maybe you've seen that where you can ask, your browser to read the text on the screen to you. So that's a one type of AI. Or you could do the opposite, and which I do all the time. I like to go to the Chicago Botanic Garden and walk around with my smartphone, and I record my brilliant insights while looking at flowers. And it converts it into text. And then I go off and edit it later. That's a form of AI. And you could take an image and that has some sort of form with data on it, and interpret the data that's on that image. Those are all artificial intelligence kinds of problems that we're solving now. But they all there's some guesswork involved in that. I mean, if you compare the form that you scan and then ask an AI tool to interpret, it could misunderstand, some of what you filled out. Whereas if you take a traditional form and you type the data in, you might make a mistake with the data. But if that application that collects that data has been properly debugged, and you put in correct data, the data that's going into that database will be correct, period. There's no guesswork about it. Whereas, scanning your IRS form or whatever it is, there's a certain fuzziness to it. So anyway, I would argue that's what is new about AI. If you think if what we're doing is thinking about it like automation. And so turns out to be a lot of use cases for that kind of automation. And the biggest leap forward lately that you might be familiar with is in text and other things, but especially text generation. So this is so-called generative AI. Now, all software automation produces output. So it generates output, you could say, about anything. But I think the reason people talk about the generative AI in that way is because the output can be enormous. And I'm going to show you an extended example today of something that I produced myself that's very important to me in my work. And you'll see the prompt that I typed in natural language, and you'll see that maybe a 1 to 100 ratio of what I typed and what it produced in response, right? So it wasn't just, please calculate this formula, and out the other end it's 52 is the answer, which is the kind of output you get from traditional automation. So that is one of the most sort of exciting and mind-blowing recent capabilities that you will see in tools such as ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and Grok. I would say those are probably the four leading, and I actually have subscriptions to all of those. Those are probably the four leading artificial intelligence bots. So these are little chat tools that you interact with, and maybe you've played with those a little bit, or maybe you've encountered this just by using Google, for instance. And now, as you may have noticed, when you search for something in Google, in addition to give you the traditional links, it will offer an artificial intelligence generated text that summarizes the results of that search. So that's an example where it's just kind of automatically added in there as an alternative output from the search that you can choose to use. So anyway, this is I would argue this is the essence of what artificial intelligence focuses on, is these kinds of hard problems that our traditional tools had a real devil of a time trying to address. And and so now there's a whole new wave of. I mean, we've been automating the hell out of everything for a long time. I mean, I'm here to tell you, right? And I don't have to tell you because you know that, right? It's not new that we're automating things that human beings used to have to do manually. But this is just there's a kind of a new frontier of applications because of the nature of this new tool that we didn't even try to plow into before. All right, that's what it is in brief. And now moving on to my provocations, as I like to call them. So I call this, AI provocations because these are claims I'm making about artificial intelligence that I argue are true, but I've kind of selected them because I think they might stimulate conversation. So I really want your feedback. I want your questions. Feel free to interrupt at any point as I'm talking here, because that's really my whole purpose. So the first provocation is that this new AI is a tsunami. It's enormous, and it's coming faster than any technology wave we've ever seen before. So some people might think, well, I can sit this one out. I'm not really interested. Sounds scary. I'm sure it'll blow over. It's not going to blow over, right? This is in a way the calm before the storm. And it's not like every time that we have a technology that goes up the hype cycle like this is, that it actually is super impactful. But I would argue that AI is one of those technology waves that is enormous. I think the closest analog that we have to it in recent years is the internet wave that we had when that first came out, and around 25 years ago. And then, of course, you may recall that the hype cycle there got completely out of control. The stock market, went crazy over all these new businesses that were focused on taking advantage of the new internet. And a bunch of those companies went bankrupt and the stock market collapsed. But at the same time, it's not as if the coming of the internet turned out to be no big deal. It was a huge deal. We wouldn't have this meeting right now without it, obviously. The companies, the main companies that we know about in technology wouldn't exist without it, or they'd be very different. So, it was an enormous wave, but it doesn't mean that at certain stages along the way that that there aren't sort of like manic, crazy periods. And we're going to see both things here, I think, too. Plenty of bankruptcies, lots of money has been pouring into this field. Not everybody's going to be successful. The cost of doing a lot of this cool stuff is not yet really fully reflected in what you pay as a consumer. That was true for a lot of the new internet stuff too. Those companies were losing money for a long time until they could make money eventually. But you had to. Amazon, with its core business, didn't make money for 20 years. The only reason they're probably here today is that along the way they figured out that the software platform that they had built for themselves was valuable to sell to other companies, and that was profitable. And I would argue that the whole selling, the book selling, and all the other store capabilities of Amazon probably wouldn't look like they do today if it weren't for that. So there's going to be a lot of chaos, a lot of bankruptcies, and so on. But the overall trend is this is a huge wave. It's impacting everything, and we shouldn't underestimate it. It's going to affect every country, every occupation, every industry. It's coming for my job. And so we have to take it seriously in that sense. Okay. Provocation number 2. AI is a special challenge because it takes aim at things that make us human. So if you think about that distinction I made between deterministic old style automation and this probabilistic fuzzy new kind of automation, the things that it's like all of our senses, vision, hearing, you know, speech, and so on, are these are all things that now are being mimicked by these AI tools. And you know, the obvious manifestation of that is the actual robot that, you know, is trying to simulate maybe all of what a human being can do. But that actually is more a kind of very specialized use case. It's the one that gets all the attention in the science fiction and in our imaginations. But that's 1% of what, you know, of the automation that's going to happen. But nevertheless, there's no question that when you start saying, well, I can think better than you can think. I can do math better than you can do math. I can forecast better than you can forecast. Or in some crazy corners of the world, you know, Mark Zuckerberg thinks he can make a virtual friend that's better than your friend. I think that's crazy. I mean, I just like doesn't understand the very nature of friendship and that type of relationship. You can't, you know, that's just creepy. But I think that all of this, one of the reasons that this is so, there's such a sense of destabilization that I think a lot of people have, including me, about all of this is partly because it is plowing into things that make us human. And we thought for a long time that these tools we created were obviously, you know, just our assistants, but we still had we were the creative ones, you know, we were the only ones who could synthesize. Only we could write poetry, or in my case, only I can write something funny. Well, I think I'm still better than the AI, but there's no question that it can do all of those things to a certain degree now. And so I think that's, you know, we've had already examples of, and I was just yesterday, I went to the University of Chicago campus here for a session on AI in science and the uses of AI that have already happening in the production of scientific papers, in the peer review essentially of these papers and looking for mistakes and things. I mean, you know, that's already happening. So, I mean, in a sense, the AI is sort of replacing research assistants and even scientists. So it's very destabilizing because it's mimicking us in a very direct way, not just our physical capability, right? You look at the Industrial Revolution and, you know, the sort of physical labor that automation could replace. That, you know, yeah, it means to be human means to be able to do manual labor, but still. Anyway, I think, and then if you combine that with the fact that it is this huge tsunami and it's happening really quickly, and it's one of these technologies that's unlike any other I can think of, where as it rolls out, it's changing rapidly. So it's not the same thing that's rolling out. And so, you know, and it's not limited to, you know, finance or you know, education or music or some particular domain like that, where you can kind of, you know, get your hands around, or maybe it doesn't affect you because that's not a place where you practice. No, it's everywhere. It affects everything. And no one can possibly predict. When you have an equation where that many variables are changing simultaneously, you cannot, if you pretend that you can forecast that, you're just a crazy person. So that's my next one. Provocation number 3, AI presents great opportunities and great threats. And this is an old story with technology, right? You don't have to be a genius to notice that more or less every technology we have ever invented was used for good and evil. I mean, we can turn almost anything into a weapon, and this is no different. And you know, I probably don't have to provide you. I mean, I can provide you with many examples of ways that this can assist our work in various ways, and I'll give you an example here in a little bit. But and I probably don't have to give you too many examples to prove that there's all kinds at the same time. There's all kinds of risks that this represents, and it's gonna be a devil of a time for us to get the benefits without paying the price. So I mean, just to take obvious examples, we've had email viruses, delivered viruses and phishing attacks and all of that for a long time, where you get, everybody's gotten and if we didn't have all of the antivirus kind of software that we already have, you probably wouldn't bother looking at your email. It would probably make our emails absolutely useless because, like 95% of it would just be spam. So what would be the point of trying to sort it out? So a lot of it you don't even see because your tools there's this, offense defense battle going on the bad guys are trying to send you, viruses, and the good guys are trying to notice them and prevent them from getting to you. Okay, that's been going on for a long time. Since we've had email, that's been going on. But obviously what AI does is it lets using the same kind of capability that I can use to generate a research analysis that's really useful to me. They are able to write an email to you, and specifically you, that draws on a whole bunch of publicly available information about you, because we've been producing digital exhaust now for a long time. There's just a trail. I don't know if you can see it, but there's everywhere you go, there's a trail of digital exhaust behind you. So if you take all that public information, not to mention any bad actor who has access to hacked information, then they can produce an email to you that will have so many specifics, and it will be an email written only to you. This isn't one of those, "Hi, I'm from Nigeria, I'm a prince," and it's the same message to everybody who gets that garbage. This is for you. This mentions your dog, your veterinary, your janitor, so many. This Zoom call might be mentioned, and you're going to be, this is from my friend. And so the possibilities of faking videos, faking emails is enormous. And so we know that it's going to be a big battle to try to, ideally through regulation, and then through, there will be plenty of fancy defensive technologies that also use AI, right? Like AI wins when there's one of these, zero-sum games of, battles. Well, guess what? AI is there to provide the email generation for the bad guy, and it's there to provide you with your tool that you pay for to fight it. And but that's just the potential for doing harm is enormous with this technology, commensurate with its capability to do good. All right, provocation number 4. We're all the computer guy now. This doesn't mean anything to you yet, but when I first got into this business of technology, I would show up at some place like a downtown Chicago law firm, and over the intercom, they would announce, "The computer guy is here." And then the computer guy, me, was expected to be able to basically do anything that they needed. They got a printer, it's not working, their software's not working, they have who knows what kind of weird computer. The computer guy is supposed to be able to fix it. I turned out to be quite good at that. So didn't really disabuse them. But the point is, at that time, in the early days of the field, there weren't that many roles, and it was a specialized field, right? Essentially nobody in that law firm had anywhere near the expertise that I had as the computer guy. Hey, we're not computer guys or gals, but now everybody's a computer guy or gal. In a sense, because everybody's using this technology now is ubiquitous, right? Everybody's got smartphones that are more powerful than what that law firm had, at that time, and so that has a lot of implications, right? We're all in the software business now. We're all in information technology. That's maybe one reason why I'm doing this talk, right? Because you can't escape this either if you wanted to. And for me, as somebody who's a professional in this field, it represents a threat too, because I got all you guys looking over my shoulder, trying to keep up with me. It's not possible, but you might know enough to be dangerous. But anyway, so this is a democratization of this field, and I think that AI, I mean, that's been true for a while now, but AI is a huge leap forward now because you're all using even greater IT powers now, so whether you like it or not, you're in my field. I don't like it that you're in my field, but there you are. And but so I think so join, welcome to the party, but now you have some responsibilities too. Okay, provocation number 5: AI will be overused. I say that based on my experience with all new hot, sexy new toys getting overused. There's always a hype cycle. Now, as I've already said, this one I think has a lot of actual power, but it doesn't mean it won't be overused. So one of my little joke titles for a comedy show in this area is Dear Possible Comcast Customer, Attached may be your bill. Now, maybe you can see what I'm doing there, which is today, Comcast bills you using deterministic methods, right? They're sure it's you, or at least if the data's right, that bill is your bill and they know it. If they got all, jazzed about the new AI tools, they would start using AI to guess whether it's you and guess whether it's, your bill. Which would be dumb, right? Like that would be rushing headlong and overusing a technique. We already had a perfectly good, better solution. So don't overuse. But I see plenty. I mean, that's maybe something that more I see as a professional. But everybody is claiming to be doing AI now, wants to do more of it. It's almost mindlessly. I saw a business startup pitch recently where after the pitch, the audience asked, so are there any actual people in this company? Because it was all about AI. And the company matched mentors with mentees, actual people mentoring kids. It couldn't be a more human-based company if it tried. Yes, it was using some new AI to do matching, but their pitch was so AI-centric, you couldn't tell what the core business was about. That just shows how much, because please look at my company as an AI play, right? So it will be overused. All right. And by the way, I would argue that if the order of invention of a lot of technologies were reversed, then the hot, sexy toy would be reversed, right? So if you go back and look at, like for a lot of young people, texting is really cool. But I'm telling you, if tomorrow was the first time we invented and released voicemail, oh my God. It's like, can you believe it? You could hear his actual voice and all of his inflections. No more emojis and trying to guess at the tone. It's unbelievable. You don't have to write anything. You just speak and it's recorded. Wow! And you don't have to be there at the time. It's unbelievable. It makes this texting that's what would happen. And I would argue the same thing here. If all we had was sort of probabilistic stuff that was kind of fuzzy and mistake laden, and then we got to, hey guys, we just invented these tools where they produce the same answer every time. And you can literally bill customers with a near 100% accuracy if you get your data right. People would be like, "Oh my God, can you believe it?" So anyway, that's part of, I think, the hype cycle there. One, I won't spend any time on this time because I know I talked about this one last time, but provocation number 6, AI will make us even sloppier. The short version of that is, the reason I say that is we're already sloppy, and we already never seen a corner we didn't want to cut. And I see that in business too. People will have a repository to put their documents in that, for example. And you're supposed to say, which project is this? And then when there's the final version of it, it should be marked as the final one. And there might be 15 old versions. And what do people do? They do a terrible job of flagging those things. And then when you come along later and say, okay, it's time to put the new version of this in, and you say, so how should we migrate your data? And they're like, oh, don't bother. It's a big mess. And then you come back 5 years later to upgrade again, and oh, don't bother. It's a big mess. I mean, so I think that now that we have these tools, hey, I've got an AI tool that can kind of guess which was the final version. And it can look inside the document and might be able to figure out which project it is. So why should I have to, tag it? And I just think that more corners will be cut. All right. Provocation number 7, AI will be a hacker's delight. Well, I think I already covered that. Mm-hmm. Provocation number 8, teams will get smaller. And then I have another one kind of paired to that. Provocation 8B, movie crowd scenes will get bigger. That's kind of a snarky one. We've already, because you can render with AI, more zombies, more people in the crowds. We've already seen this anyway. I don't have to really guess about that. You've probably seen some movies where the screen is just filled with stuff because they can, right? So but back to the serious one. There's a lot of cases now where, especially in business, where you have teams that have certain roles all present, collaborating. And I'll spend much time on this, but I've seen already evidence that people are going to start popping off those teams. The teams are getting smaller, and the people who are left are kind of using they're replacing those roles with virtual tools. Now you don't have the marketing person there, but somebody uses the fancy tool to kind of generate a marketing plan that's good enough, and so that person's no longer part of that team. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. I think that startup companies, I've noticed this pattern where most startup companies start as one person. They kind of have an idea and they push it a certain distance, and then they try to get funding and they add to the team, right? But I see them going solo a lot longer now, and there used to be a point where they would need a programmer. Well, they keep going because they generate the code themselves using AI tools, and they need a contract, they generate it. They don't get a lawyer yet, and so I think there's a lot of that. Provocation number 9, we're not ready. I think that's both individually and especially socially, politically. I think that we aren't. It's the biggest fear I have, because I think it would take enlightened leadership to gain the benefits of this wave without paying the price. And needless to say, we have the farthest thing from enlightened leadership here. We aren't doing anything. We're not the closest we come now to federal level regulation is to try to stop the states from doing anything. So it's a negative regulation push right now at the federal level. And I'm not concerned just about regulation. I just think you would need very enlightened public leadership that was focused on how the ripple effects of this technology and the implications for training and retraining and global competition. I don't want to get into this in any detail, but we gave China some of our best chips just because we got some money. Trump got a deal, and that is, whatever you think of that, it's a ridiculous basis for establishing, a geopolitical policy. There are a lot of things we should be doing right now to prepare for all of the dislocations that are going to happen because of this, and I don't see us doing anything. So that's a big concern. That's a whole topic unto itself. Provocation number 10. The fundamental things still apply. And I will spare you singing that song, The Fundamental Things Still Apply, as time goes by, unless one of you would like to provide said music. Maybe it's playing in your head. But not everything's changing. And because I have I'll jump ahead here to another provocation, which is in the future, everyone will be an amateur futurologist. I see and I think that's because we know that we can all sense that there's this big tsunami coming. And we're desperate to understand, what's it going to do? Who's going to be affected? What's going on? Hey, what's going on? So there's a big demand to know, but it's very difficult to know. So it's not like we have professionals in every sense we need them to be our futurologists on this. So a lot of amateurs have come in to fill the void, such as me. But I think partly because of that, there's this so there's greater demand for futurology than there is supply, and a lot of really dumb things are being written. Since I happen to know the software business really well, I'm in a position to have my own deeply held opinions about a lot of what gets written. And even in places like the New York Times, there was an essay recently about, software, and now 1 billion people are going to write their own software. And it was, this whole, I think probably if you read that article, you would probably think you probably wouldn't raise a single question about it. It would sound pretty sensible. And I didn't think a single sentence in that piece was correct. So, but I think that, and one of the reasons I say that is, I think a lot of the sort of fundamental errors that get made with the amateur futurology is to think that everything's up for grabs. Everything's going to change now. We're all going to write our own software. Really? Software still costs $0 to make a copy. So Excel's been around for more than 30 years. You can make your own spreadsheet. It only costs Microsoft nothing to make another copy of that. The economics really changed. Should we have 100 separate repositories in our companies? Because we can rapidly produce them? No, that's chaos. That doesn't make any sense. You still need one central repository. You still need standardization. You should still have one definition of what is an invoice, so you can send it to somebody else. There's a bunch of, and I would love to talk about this forever, but there's a bunch of fundamental things that still are true, and the AI can do those things faster and better. But if people think that that all the basics are out. We don't need elegant software anymore, or we don't need to reuse anything because we can make a new one. Or that, there's going to be no such thing as authoritative sources of information. I just think that there's a great many things that have been true for a long time that will still be true. And anyone who thinks they're not is going to eventually come up against the hard reality of what I just said. Okay. All right. I've only got 16 minutes left, and I want to show you a kind of an extended example. So I think I'm going to use all the rest of my time doing that. If you're like me, you like learning from examples. So maybe I'm hoping this will be instructive. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. I hope. Here we go, share. Share screen. I'm going to share the whole screen. All right. So now you see yourselves. And I am going to go into one of these. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I guess it is kind of dumb that I still have you guys showing up in here. I should have probably just shared this application. No, I don't know, whatever. Okay, so this is one of these bot tools that I talked about. This happens to be Claude. This is by a company called Anthropic. It's a competitor of ChatGPT from OpenAI. And you're looking at one of my chats. Can I make this? Can make you guys all shrink? Yeah, I'm going to shrink so that I don't see your faces anymore. Okay, so the way these chat tools work is they all have an interface that looks kind of like this. In fact, almost exactly like this. And, just it's a very minimalist screen. And the main way that you interact with them is just natural language. So instead of using menus or some sort of highly structured interface, you really just type into a box. Now, of course, this is called prompting, and to do it in a fancy way would be called prompt engineering. And there was some talk, I don't hear much of it anymore, about how you're going to be able to have a job in the future despite AI is you're going to learn how to prompt. And it's like, I was pretty skeptical of that. It's like, well, it's just writing in English. I mean, well, and clearly, maybe with a highly structured way sometimes, but that doesn't seem like it's the kind of skill that's going to be your big competitive advantage. But in any case, I think it is important to be able to prompt well. And so here's an example of mine. And I'll just read this prompt because it might be too small to see. And this is my actual research, something I actually care about. It's one of the most important things to me, actually, because it's a new business startup plan. And I'm using this tool. I'm going to actually use everything I'm showing you here. So it's not fake. Anyway, if one were to do in-depth interviews, among other methods, with leading master schedulers and technical leads of the largest enterprise projects, trying to determine with maximum granularity everything they understand about details of their projects, how much of that understanding, including scenarios and formal or informal mitigation plans, how much of that model of this world, typically, is reflected in their schedule engine tools model? To what degree is the gap due to limitations of the tool versus incomplete metadata and data entered? What enhancements to such schedule engines, replacing tools such as Microsoft Project, Oracle Primavera, and Deltek OpenPlan, could close the model gap, making it less like a stickman model? So I will pause here for a second to just maybe explain this a little bit. I hope this isn't too technical, but I realize it's kind of my world. So a master scheduler is a person at a place like NASA. Actually, I know the master scheduler of the James Webb Space Telescope, the Orion space capsule that you've been reading about, Artemis, and so on. The people who plan those the schedules and other elements of those projects are sometimes called master schedulers. What else might be unclear here? When I talk about a mitigation plan, that is a kind of a term of art in the risk, when you're trying to understand the risks of the project. So if you say, well, if one of our suppliers can't supply us with the mirrors that we need in the telescope, how are we going to mitigate that risk? Are we going to have a second supplier? We're going to buy something off the shelf? What are we going to do? And that would be a mitigation plan. It's contingent on whether the risk happens. I don't know, when I talk about models of the world here, I think fundamentally software is trying to model the world. It's trying to create in a virtual world a model of some part of the real world. And that model, I call it here, could be a stick man, meaning a very crude picture of that world that doesn't have very much accurate detail. Or it could be a much more complete model. So I'm talking about, and the model gap, I'm claiming here, I'm asking the tool to analyze this question about, what are the gaps between what the leading schedulers have in their heads and what is actually captured in the tools we use. All right, that was my question. Now here is the answer. Now, and also you see this, the way, as it was thinking in the first place, I'm going to expand this. It will spit out stuff like this about what it's doing along the way. The user is asking a deeply specialized question about enterprise project scheduling tools and the gap, blah, 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 blah. This is a knowledge analysis question that doesn't require web search. And it's thinking to itself, essentially. And then here's more. This is, again, behind the scenes. It's sharing its plan, right? Its plan for answering this question. My question has several parts. And so on. So it's that, and then it's done. So it's kind of done this initial evaluation of what I said and come up with its high-level plan for what it's going to do. Okay, then it says, this is one of the most incisive questions one can ask about the state of project controls, and it cuts to the heart of why mega projects so routinely overrun. Let me work through. Now, I appreciate the sycophancy here, Oh, well, I guess I asked a very incisive question. And you may have read that there is there's been plenty of research on we like when tools tell us we're special, right? And the tool manufacturers know that. So there's been something of a kind of trend in telling us that our question's really good. But in this case, it was true. All right. Anyway, now I'm going to read a little bit more of this to give you an idea of how this tool is approaching this problem. The size of the gap. If you sat with a truly skilled master scheduler on a large EPC, defense, or infrastructure program for several hours, someone with 20 plus years of experience who lives and breathes the project, you'd find that the CPM, that it's using a few acronyms here, by the way, that I know, but you wouldn't know. Critical path method is what CPM stands for. That the CPM model in their tool captures roughly 10 to 25% of their operative mental model, depending on project maturity and discipline. That number shocks people, but consider what the scheduler knows that the model doesn't reflect. They carry probabilistic, there's my word, intuitions about duration uncertainty. Not just this activity is 40 days, but it's 30 if the crew is the A team, 40 normally, and 70 if we get the permit delay I'm worried about. They understand conditional branching. If the geotechnical report comes back unfavorable, an entire sequence of activities changes, not just a duration. They know which logic ties are hard physics. You can't pour on steel that isn't erected. Versus soft preferences. We usually do electrical before HVAC in this area, but could reverse it if pressed. They hold a rich model of resource fungibility. Which crews can flex cross work fronts, which subcontractors are sharing labor with another project, what the real production rate is when fatigue sets in at month 6. They understand political and organizational dynamics, which approval gates are rubber stamps and which are genuine decision points where scope could change. They know their risk mitigation playbook, the formal one and the informal one they've built from scars on previous projects. They understand seasonal and environmental constraints at a granularity far beyond what a calendar toggle captures. They know which float. Now, float is another term of art here, which means you have a little bit of slack in your schedule. If a task is delayed, your overall, say, launch date doesn't need to change because you've got a little slack in there. That's float. Anyway, they know which float is real float and which is illusory because a resource constraint or physical access limitation will consume it. Almost none of this lives in the XER or MPP file. Those are the MPP is a Microsoft project plan file. So anyway, I won't read more of that, but I gotta say that is damned impressive. At my best, I write stuff like that, and I know this stuff, but I picked this tool and this dialogue because this was one of the most impressive interactions I've had, and this goes on and on, drilling into details here, and then you'll eventually, all of the kind of gaps that it's talking about here are gaps I've already thought about, but it's very impressive that it suggested them. And of course, these are kind of technical things that you wouldn't necessarily know anything about. But then I said, turn this into an interview protocol and coding framework for studying exactly where expert knowledge sits inside versus outside the schedule model. So now I want to interview these best schedulers to figure out what's in their head that they can't put into the tool because the tool has limitations. And so then it builds out this whole document that I asked for, and there's this huge document now that I could use as a starting point to edit the whole protocol of questions that I would ask these people. And then here's the final piece, or no, almost final. So this is me again. This is me following up. So you can see this is a discussion thread. I ask something, they say something. I ask a follow-up, they say, and back and forth we go. So I said, this is inherently speculative, but to what extent might the current lack of these future tool features we can imagine limit the mental models that experts have today that we might extract through interviews and the like, partly because there is no systematic collection tooling to channel their thinking in this direction, partly because they can't operationalize this knowledge easily, partly because it depends upon innovative imagination and no doubt other factors. So that's a pretty hard question. I mean, if I asked a human ask them to speculate about this, that's tough, even for the best. Okay, so this is what it says, and I think this is quite impressive. First, it says, this is one of the most important questions you could raise of us. Again, little sycophancy there. Thank you very much. Yes, it was a very good question, I grant you. And it points to a genuine epistemological problem that sits underneath the entire protocol. The protocol as written implicitly assumes that experts possess a rich mental model and the tool merely fails to capture it. That the knowledge exists fully formed and the tool is a lossy recording medium. But what you're pointing to is the possibility that the tool shapes the cognition itself, that the medium doesn't just fail to record the message, but partly determines what messages get composed in the first place. So anyway, that is impressive thinking right there, I have to say. That is, and this is useful. And so it broke that down into the different sort of elements of the issues that arise because people can't think. Okay, so then I say, well, actually, I think the summary sentence here was really good. But ultimately, the deepest version of your question points to something that can only be answered longitudinally and experimentally. Build the better tool, put it in the hands of expert schedulers for a year, and then re-interview them. My strong prediction is that you'll find they've developed substantially richer mental models, not just that they've captured pre-existing knowledge, but that the tool has taught them to see things they weren't seeing before. The tool wouldn't just be a better mirror, it would be a better lens. I mean, that's going right into my marketing. But anyway, and then finally I said, and this is where I'll stop with my little example here, but what assistance can you provide to architect, design, build, test, document, market, sell, and support the envisioned tool? So I'm just asking it, hey, how can you help me with this big, bad project? And then it goes into it. And it's using the whole conversation. So like it says here, the product vision is already well defined from our conversation. Let me walk through each phase and where it can do heavy lifting. And so it can do architecture, it can do this, it can do that. So it says, it gives very specific things that it can do to produce documents for me about the architecture, the user interface. I'll spare you all the details here, but it steps through a whole bunch of tasks that go into building and selling software like this, and tells me exactly what kinds of things it could do. And it's all those things are real. Those are real things that we have to do. And then I asked it to so here it's giving an example of if it used. I asked another follow-up question about automating this, and so now it's giving me little charts here, telling me how much of each of those tasks it could automate, and how. And then it's giving me some automation diagrams here about how I could combine some of these pieces. Anyway, I have to say, without tools like this to accelerate my research on this, I don't think I would take this on, right? I've had this idea that there's these huge gaps and that should be fixed for NASA and others, but it was too big a hill. But now that I have this kind of capability to expand my my vision about this, I'm doing this. My plan here is to form a consortium of organizations like NASA and get them to fund building this completely new modeling capability. And I got to sell them on it. And I need this kind of material to explain to them the vision about what this thing is going to be and what problems it's going to solve and all that. And there's just no way. It's too ambitious. It was, without being able to accelerate what I'm doing. So I don't know if that's helpful to you. I know it's a very technical thing. It's something that's hugely important to me right now, today. So I'm hoping that, sort of seeing this kind of this work product in action is of some use in understanding sort of specifically what, and again, there's many other pieces, parts to the whole AI landscape, right? These chat bots are one piece that is getting a lot of attention because you can use this today if you want to, right? You can sign up and start using it, and you're just typing English. There's no fancy user interface, but those pictures, those diagrams you saw at the end of that document were taking little what are called agents, which are little capabilities like we're talking about, but that are automated, and they work automatically in the background. And so they're kind of like, the Lucille Ball, chocolate or whatever it was, assembly line donut. What was it? But anyway, that assembly line, and you have these little agents that each do something along the way to automate a process. So whereas when you're working with one of these chat bots, obviously it's a human interaction. It's ad hoc. It's a dialogue with that bot. So let me spit out. I'll just name the rest of my provocations. In the future, you're going to read mostly stuff you wrote. And provocation 11B, in the future, you're going to use a lot of air quotes. Because things like what is a book or an article are being destabilized. I mean, and you just saw an example there. There's a lot of material. I don't know how many pages total that is that I've got going on there with the documents I produced there. I bet it's at least 50 pages. And increasingly, I spend my day reading that stuff. I've already read my 10,000 books, so don't blame me for that. But, that 50-page document, unless I decide to share it with someone, was written entirely for me, and I'm the only one who will ever read it. And increasingly, more and more, if I did an analysis of where's my reading go, from books to the New York Times, Atlantic, Foreign Affairs, all the publications I subscribe to, and then miscellaneous stuff you read on the web, and then there's these documents that I've rendered that are, what are they? They're not like an article in the Atlantic, because that's a piece of content that we could all theoretically have read. So what is this? But I think increasingly having this highly, like, that document is produced, it's a customization specifically for me. And so it's super responsive to what I want to read. And I find myself spending more and more of my time reading those types of summaries of things. And I just think, so that's why I said, but did I write that? I mean, it's all destabilized, right? Like, none of the words publishing, writing, editing, reading, they're all being destabilized. Provocation number 12. Everybody thinks they're going to win the AI Hunger Games. They're not. So I encounter so many people. I don't know if you know the Hunger Games. So it's this dystopian world where teenagers compete and only one survives. And a lot of people seem to have taken the attitude out there that, hey, if I am the biggest evangelist for AI in my company, the earliest adopter, surely I will be the last human fired. So there's that logic just means everywhere you look, there's people who are enthusiastically working to destroy themselves in a way, but somehow there's this notion that that I will alone will survive. So I'm good luck with that. And finally, in the future, provocation number 15, all presentations will be about AI. As I just proved.
So we could probably go on for the rest of the afternoon. I have at least a dozen questions. I'm just sure.
I'm happy to stay. I don't know if because I did fill the entire time with talk, but I'm happy to stay and answer questions unless you have a hard stop.
I don't know. Since Lucas isn't here, I don't know if it will suddenly turn
I stayed long last time. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. Well, if you're okay with staying and people do have questions,
fire away.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
Great.
This is mundane compared to what you've been talking about, but it's my practical nature. Out in the world of literature, of writing, of newspapers, conspiracy theories abound, misinformation abounds. How does AI system filter truth from fiction? Is anybody vetting what's called a fact anymore?
Wow, that's a really good question.
It is.
And there goes an hour. There's a few things I can say about it right off the top. I recently went to a presentation by the person who runs marketing for Farm Journal, which you probably may not have ever heard of, but I grew up on a farm. I read bloody Farm Journal, and I was very interested to go. And it's a whole enterprise now. It's not just the magazine. That's I think it's always been the leading magazine that farmers get. but they are a huge digital shop now. And what the presentation was about was search engine optimization versus what she called answer engine optimization. This has become a new term of art. So I don't know if you've ever heard of SEO or search engine optimization, but that is because, you go out there to Google and you type something and then it finds, 40,000 or a million relevant documents. Which ones get to go on the first page, right? There's a whole algorithm behind the scenes that decides that. Quite mysterious, but people who do this for a living, try to figure it out. And then they try to, position their websites to win the Hunger Games, so to speak, like Google Hunger Games. And, a lot of that is, some of it is fake, like they'll create a whole bunch of fake websites that all point to the real website so that Google will say, oh, this must be really important because everybody's pointing to it, is linking to it. But anyway, that's the traditional game that has been played now for 25 years. But now there's this new game and if we were to look carefully at some of what I did with my chat there are references to Pew, to NASA websites, to a lot of places. And so now there's a competition to be incorporated into those answers. And how are you the winner of that Hunger Games? And what she said was very interesting to me because they do a bunch of things on their website, on the Farm Journal sites, with all of their columnists and specialists to win that game. So they know things like put all of your credentials out there, brag about yourself, every single thing you've ever published, you want to be the authoritative, the author, and then the way you write your content is supposed to be, nicely chunkable and bullet pointable, the way the chat bots like to. So you kind of make it easy for them to convert your content into the answer. And I asked her, it's like, what does it mean to be the trusted information source in this world? How in the world do you, but anyway, but what I found interesting is if you compare the traditional search engine, these chat bots, and then social media, which has these boost algorithms. I've read that 98% of the videos that people watch on TikTok are not selected by the user; they're pushed at them. It's just, cat, war, whatever, makeup, whatever it is, it's all being pushed at people. And very little of it is because they went out there and said, I would like to look up such and such. So, and of course we know that in the social media space, it's a complete wreck. It's all anger, fear, hate that's being boosted. And those are AI algorithms doing just a sheer evil, I think, addicting girls to things and all kinds of bad things. Traditional search engines, have their issues in what they choose to highlight. But at least for the moment, these chat bots, if you look at how she was optimizing their content, she was trying to be the most accurate, the most authoritative source with the most impressively credentialed author on the most impressive website. So that's all good, right? Like, we can only hope that that's the basis that you would try to use. I don't know. So if she's right, and I think she is, her living depends on it. I mean, that's, and she lives that, so she knows what works and what doesn't. So I think, at least for the moment, these chat bots are doing a better job of serving up truth than those other techs, especially social media. But of course, social media they're all using AI now. So it's not really AI gets a pat on the back, but this particular chatbot for right now seems to be the zone where, and that's certainly in my own experience. Like in that stuff that I read to you, that was high octane content. And the only way that they could have rendered that is that they have to be looking at, and they cite, I mean, you can kind of tell what they're looking at because they'll cite NASA, the Department of Defense studies, Pew Research. When I see who they're citing, it gives you an idea of what they're training on and giving weight to. And I think it's pretty good for right now. How long that will last, I don't know. But the subject of disinformation and all the, I mean, as the old joke says, both cream and shit rises to the top. Where's the cream? Where's the cream?
You have me snorting. That's not a good thing.
Okay, I have a question that's so rudimentary that I'm afraid it's an insult to you to even ask it, but this is where I am. So I'm a writer, and at the moment, Anthropic owes me a lot of money because it has stolen, a lot of my words from my books.
You didn't happen to write about gaps in schedule engines, did you?
Oh, yeah, right. Well, that's
because
my
if
question.
so, I want to thank you personally.
That's my question is this is, again, very, very basic, but I don't understand how it took the words that it was learning from our work. Apparently, that's what they said. I don't know how it converts that to what it puts out. I just don't get it. That's what I keep hearing. They're training on your words. Great. Okay. But I don't understand how that becomes what AI is, the chatbot that can reason, apparently.
Well,
Can you go all the way back to the very beginning to answer that question?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. This is, well, first of all, to understand how the AI. So remember, if I don't know, you guys in school, you write a paper like elementary school, and even if you used a source like an encyclopedia, you remember you're supposed to put it in your own words.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you can't just copy it. So there was a small amount of translation that it was your value added to the research. But that's elementary school. But it's a real problem now because it is so easy for these chat tools to put anything in their own words. I mean, if the standard for copying other people's work is word for, which has been the traditional thing, right? Like when people have gotten in trouble for copyright infringement, there's chunks of text that's word for word lifted. You will rarely, if ever, find that happen with the chatbots, even if they stole your entire book. They're going to put it, quote unquote, in their own words. They don't just put chunks of existing text out there.
You're there.
The fundamental process they go through.
I found him
is.
Oh, please mute yourself.
We had so many discussions.
And can you please mute yourself?
I thought it was great to get some.
I don't know if anyone else can mute her.
Oh, let me see if I can mute her.
There something happened there. Maybe she went out of range. But anyway, So the way that these large language models work, which is really the underlying technology, is that they train on trillions of documents, and possibly including yours, and they use all of that to build up this massive text prediction engine, and it's constantly writing by predicting what is the next word, and believe it or not, from that really basic underlying method, they end up writing these coherent.
Yeah, that's the part I don't understand. How do they make it coherent? They're just choosing the words, and maybe it's in sequence, but I don't understand how they get it to make sense.
Well, they take what you wrote, assuming they included it in their training data, and all these other trillions of documents, and whereas we can only read a finite amount of material, right? We're very driven by particular documents. That's how we think about the world, right? Like I read, this book on the Turner's thesis on the frontier, and then I read that, and it's very document specific the way we think about these things and the arguments and so on. These things create this huge soup with all these documents in there, and among them, 100,000 people have said some pattern of things,
Right.
and that is the most common pattern. Aggregate, it is a word soup, not an article soup in a way, right? And it's almost impossible for us to kind of grok this process because it is so beyond it's so different than the way
that's why I'm stuck trying to figure out how in the hell does it do that to make sense out of it.
But that's an example too of where we need it's a word soup. But I read you some examples. I mean, it's extraordinary. The sophistication of that thinking is it's me at my best. I'm using myself as the measure.
Okay. So this is a very simplistic. So.
Oh, by the way, I just want to say, in terms of regulation needs to cover this area because they are stealing your work.
Yes.
And they're putting this stuff like the whole concept of fair use. Like if I write an article, I could go to your book and I could quote, something from it. As long as it's a fair use, I don't have to compensate you.
Yeah, I know that.
But in what world? Now, I would argue that the search engines already violated fair use upside down because they suck in your entire book. And then, sure, they may put a little summary out there in the search results, but they took your whole book, and they made a bargain with you that said, well, you don't want your book in here, then we'll never reference it. You can get no attention, or we'll take the whole thing. So we've had from day one with this, in my opinion, from the search engines, mass violations of copyright, and we've let that become the norm. And now this is wildly worse.
Well,
because
I
at least
understand that. No, wait. You can't get rudimentary enough to be where I am. And by the way, if I disappear, my battery is running way, way down. So that's not an insult to you. But there's still a part that I don't understand. Everything you're saying is true. They owe me $300 for every book of mine that they stole or whatever. But I don't understand how they take that word soup and make it into a, something that's coherent. That's the part I don't understand.
Well, now you're in. We would have to be in a really deep soup data science to answer that. We'd have to go, and we still wouldn't answer your question because you wouldn't understand a single thing that the data scientists would say, and I would only understand half of it. So it becomes very technical and mathematical very quickly when you go down to that.
I just have to accept that.
But there's no question that the use that they're making of your book is not fair use.
Oh no, I understand all that. That's a different question.
I could probably, if you gave me, in fact, I'll do this for you if you want, but just as an experiment. But if there's a link somewhere on the web where they got your book, they grabbed a copy of it. If you tell me what that link is, I can use one of these tools to say, rewrite this book in my words, and it'll do it. It'll do it. I'll give you back your book in my words.
And I hope that's not as interesting as my original words. Flat the way so much. Okay.
So going to your example, you're expert enough to evaluate the response and that it was really good and you gave it, you really liked it. It was good. But it also personalizes it. It feeds back to you what you want to hear. So is this kind of circular? And what if you weren't as talented or some guy who doesn't know anything about this?
Well, it's an interesting thing, right? Because okay, so my particular background is I have a liberal arts background. I'm a big believer in the liberal arts, and I've continued to read widely in all the social sciences and humanities and so on, even while in my career, I was layering on all this technical stuff. I happen to think that's a great way to go, even though it's not popular anymore.
Yeah, and we're losing it. And
Yeah.
I worry
Yeah,
about
we're
that.
losing it. But it's interesting, so I won best editorial in the country in college, where I was the editor of my paper for a paper. I went to for college to Valparaiso University, and then I came here to Chicago, and I was in a thing called Christ College there, which is their honor school. But anyway, I wrote an editorial called "Liberal Arts on Downswing at VU?" ? And of course the answer was yes. And this was 40 years ago or whatever. I think I could dust that thing off, change a few examples, run it every year, and keep winning the award. Because that's just been such a long-term process. But I wonder if maybe they'll be on the upswing.
Yeah, all the programmers are losing their jobs.
Well, and this sort of certainly you have access to. Okay, so to take one example, one of the things that this technology is really, really good at is interdisciplinary work, interdisciplinary research. I mean, in our world, everybody's so hyper specialized, academics especially, right? And so I don't know, for the men's group way back a while ago within the village, I gave my first AI talk, and I gave that one on the modern equivalent of a literature review. And I did it on I hope to be a book called The Art and Science of Improv and Comedy. And I had about 50 hypotheses that I developed when I was at Second City and other places, which were things I would sit there and think, I wonder if this is the way this works, or I think this guru has this in his head. I wonder if it's true. Tina Fey seems to think X, And so I had these, but I didn't really know what I was going to do with it. I just thought I'd like to actually research them, scientifically, and thus destroy the comedy. Right? But now that I have this technology, I did this big exercise where I did literature reviews to figure out what was the existing state of the art in researching these hypotheses. And I marched through all 50 of them, and then I used the AI to kind of summarize all my findings and all that. And if you think about it, I mean, you can't go to the Department of Improv over there at the university, right? Or Department of Comedy, something, right? There is no such thing. And so what existing literatures would you search to try to figure out if research had already been done on these questions? And I'm not going to bore you, but I could list probably 20 different fields that in the course of that literature review I did, it found something about communications or teamwork or the way the mind works or language or a bunch of things that had something to do with the question I wanted to answer. And they were scattered all over the winds in terms of academic disciplines. So I think there's projects like that you can't really. It's in a world of specialists, there's no one academic you can go to that can answer those questions. It just doesn't. So it's really good at interdisciplinary. But somehow like that process. Like your question was about okay, I knew how to read that material and make sense of it. But I don't know. There's the interdisciplinary nature, the focus on writing well. Because you're trying to be very, very precise with the prompts. These engines are, by the way, my mantra in business is never assume. And these AI engines assume everything. They always assume whatever you don't. It's kind of like what in our Constitution, whatever is not explicitly said is reserved to the states and the people. I mean, with the AI engine, anything you don't specify. It gets to decide. If you say, I would like you to write me a program to do X, Y, and Z, and you don't bother to say what language to write it in, guess what? It'll just choose. So anyway, there's a higher order kind of integrative. I somehow intuit that the skills that are really useful here are the ones that I kind of learned in the liberal arts. So I kind of have a feeling that maybe the liberal arts will make a comeback, because I think it's yeah, it's pretty. I don't know. I don't know, but I sort of sense it. I don't know, and that wow, I think it's useful, being able to write, reading, having a broad background. I don't know.
Mhm. Well, I don't. That's a more
I had
optimistic.
how many times did I say I don't know in that answer? Too many.
I mean, maybe we should end on this more
Yeah.
optimistic tone, but I still have a problem with authenticity and lies. And if everybody, for example, if every person who reports to someone tells them what they want to hear rather than the truth, that just sort of.
Yeah, I think you could give too much weight to that, the sycophancy. Like I did call it out at the very beginning of those answers, where it said that is about the most insightful question you could ask, Okay, and it's true, but on the one, but it was about the most insightful. It's right. So, but also that's about the only that hint of that is about all you would find. Claude, I think, is especially good at being, just very academic and it has a reputation for being really strong at writing well and so on. So I think you could exaggerate how much of a problem that is. Also, I could instruct Claude not to ever do that, and it wouldn't. All these bots, you can basically tell them, look, I'm think of me as Sergeant Friday, just the facts, ma'am. You can give it a kind of persona which will shape the way it writes. I'm just saying, I think the sycophancy is far from the biggest problem. But the problem, the underlying problem you're pointing to, of all of this, the lies, the falsehoods. I mean, the lies make it around the globe before we wake up. That is being boosted by this AI, because you're already starting to see fake videos, fake images. We're seeing that in political campaigns. And who is the author? Trump sometimes reposts some garbage that somebody has posted on the internet somewhere, and then they can just say, well, I didn't write it. And then the person who wrote it, well, I didn't really write it either. There's the whole idea of, well, in my opinion, we should never have gone down the road of anonymity on the internet in most of the places where we have that. Because, when people can be fake people, they tend to be really let their nasty out. And we all have reputations. And especially like me, I grew up in a farm community. Everybody knew who you were. Everybody knew your business. You could get away with something once, and then you got a reputation that you do that, and you can't get away with it anymore, right? There's the actual small community and I think the Hyde Park Village and Hyde Park has enough of this that I think that's a good thing, right? Yay, Village. How about that but so I think
yay for villages, yay for liberal arts. I mean, what else can we promote? Dan, this is fantastic. This is really I need to listen to the recording over and over again to absorb all of what you've shared with us, and I really thank you. And we've kept you much too long, but we do hope we can get you to come back again. And thank you.
All right, thank you. It was great.
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
all of your questions.
Yes, it was
and
good.
your time. I think the last time I made the appeal that I think it's important that we all become knowledgeable about these technologies so that we can be, informed citizens, and not just say, oh, I'm going to sit this one out. It's too important. So I think it's really important to try to make a commitment to understand it so you can be a knowledgeable citizen. And you'll carry a better sign.
So we really do
Thank
need
you.
every time they give us an upgrade, we should say yes.
All right.
Thank you.
It was fun
Take
again.
care.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Bye-bye.